Good morning. It's that time of the year again, and can't believe that the year has gone by so fast. 2016, and I have a few videos, and I've been trying to edit them, and then I thought, you know what? I have so many. I have like part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, and I think the best video I have is the one video of Mama's Tamales. Is an actual different channel, and when I first made my first clip back in 2010, and I talked about my family a little bit, and how this was a food memory, how tamales for Christmas is a food memory for me, and how I didn't talk about how I got into the business. You'll see that in my introductory video. But anyways, I'm just going to recap on some of that on that video. And the other one is called Mama's Tamales. I don't think it has the apostrophe in it. It's just Mama's, M-A-M-A-S, Tamales, T-A-M-A-L-E-S. And it's part 1 and part 2. And like I said, it was like 6 years ago, 2010, you could see. And so that has been going on. It's been out there. And then I kind of I subscribed it to this this cooking channel. So anyways, I have everything set up. This is pretty much what you would call a mise en place. So, but before we get into that, like I said, this is a food memory for me. I remember when I used to, ever since I was a kid, Mama being in the kitchen, and I think Mama cooking in the kitchen was a bit therapeutic for her. It was her way of escaping and having her own space. And I would always find her in the kitchen, and my dad at the table reading his papers, and reading his newspapers, his his little bit, I don't say this in a bad way, his little addiction in the sweepstakes, and that was his pleasure. And then and Mama would always be cooking. My dad worked very hard. He worked at the PFE ice plant for 37 years, and he retired as a chief foreman. But Mom was she worked in the hotels in Sacramento. She worked as in the housekeeping, and she would always praise herself for doing like 16 rooms a day, and 16 to 18, and she'd come home with sometimes tips, and and it was, but I think her favorite pastime was being in the kitchen. And so anyways, but when she would make those tamales, oh my God, it was such she knew that the family loved tamales. And again, it comes all the way back, probably my great-great-grandmother, because they would make tamales. My grandmother, or my great-grandmother, maybe my great-grandfather, or great-great. I still haven't researched it that far, but I know my great-grandmother would make them, and then, or maybe my great-grandfather, and then my grandmother Simona Topete de Leon would make them. And these are my mom's family, and so she would make them. And like I said in the video, that she would raise this beautiful hog for us to come every year, and and they would, the people that were around, I mean, she had like 30 acres of land, and she raised corn, which was sustainable and non-GMO. She would take the seeds from the corn and replant them, my grandmother would. And she had a 2-room hut. I don't know how they lived, but they did. I mean, it was like, I think she had like 7 kids. I can't count them right now, but the kitchen was like, the house was made out of mud and straw and dry straw, and she would make these bricks, and then they would do the plaster, and I think you'll know more about that. But everybody, after they worked all day, they would come and they would huddle in the kitchen. And we used to go every 3 years. It wasn't always the best of the trips, but I'd like to remember the good parts, the good memories that we had. And I remember the corn, how delicious it was. And maybe because of the topography, which is the land is much different, the dirt, that is, it's much different. It was clear skies. There was not a car in sight. In order to get to my grandmother's house, we had to ride burros, mules, and horses. We couldn't wear red because there were bulls out there, and if you wore red, they would attack you. We had such great memories, and so it would take all day, from morning, early in the morning, from the village, going all the way into her place. Would take like all day till we didn't get there till dawn, till the sun was almost down, and we would rise up really early in the morning. I mean, before the sun came up. So we were leaving early in the morning before the sun came up. I mean, we would eat and hurry up and get out, and then it must have been like 10, 12 hours, and we would be on those burros, and then my grandmother would have to take a soap for the horses that would drink out of the streams because there were leeches. Now everything was just organic, I would like to say. But we had to be careful as well. And a couple times I took very ill. And I'm sure other family members did too. But my grandmother was a healer. So she had her little remedies, and she was a midwife, and she was like this wonderful gift, I think, to humanity. She was a little tough though. My grandparents, they were kind of tough, but they were farmers and ranchers, and so the tamales were something that the whole village, the neighbors would gather and do them. And the women would gather around and make these tamales, and they would work so hard. And then Mama, she brought that tradition here to the United States, and every year I remember her making them. And sorry, I just miss her. That was my food memory. My mother making tamales. And that was the name of my business, Mama's Tamales. I named it after her. And I don't want to ever lose my mom's food memory. And every year, I mean, they say time heals all wounds, but I don't think so, because each year it gets difficult because I can't call her and say, Mom, what are you doing? And hear her voice and say, Hija, estoy haciendo tamales. And my father just sitting at the table. And he would just give her space. So anyways, sorry. But I thought I would share a little bit about my food memory. Oh, that music isn't helping, is it? Anyways, I wanted to share some of the secrets that she would have, and yeah, I miss her. I love your mother, because she's the only one you'll ever have. It was really hard for me to see her in a facility, this beautiful, courageous woman that came all the way from Mexico, and stood very strong with her family and just really gave all that she could. And I just used to love finding her in the kitchen and her making these beautiful tamales. And anyways, so I'm going to wash my hands and show you some of the tips, okay? And excuse the tears. They're only tears, but I miss my mother. What can I say? Okay. Alrighty. So, okay, I'm going to change the music. Now, I have some pots already made. When you're when you boil your meats, make sure you separate the pots and you mark them. I have just a little bit of the masking tape, and I get a marker and I just mark them. Okay? So I have beef, chicken, and this is pork. Now, I do cover them when I first started because I want it to heat up. And then I remove the cover because I want it to cook for like a good, Mom would cook them for like a little longer than 30 minutes. And so it's twice cooked. So you boil the meat, you pull the meat out, you cool it out in a shallow pan, and then you cool it, and then you reserve the broth, and you use the broth for the, I'm just going to turn this off. How's that? Yeah. Anyways, so we've reserved the broth for the meats itself. And so the main ingredients I have, which I'll show you in a minute, but I'm allowing this to kind of simmer until it has this beautiful, like a skin that develops on top. Okay? And so I don't know if you can see that. So it's a little skin type, and it's delicious. And so I stir it frequently, but you want to cook, and usually that takes about a good half hour to 45 minutes. And I want to make sure all the peppers are in there in the meat, so every time they take anybody who takes a bite of your tamales, then they can bite into the meat and all the beautiful flavors and the ingredients that are combined in that meat. So, like I said, I have my chicken, I have it marked, I have my beef that's still simmering, and that, if you have leftover flavors, the liquids, which is called the picadillo, you want to reserve it and cook the meat, and you can add it as well. Okay? Refrigerated, mark it, the date of course, and then just put it in the refrigerated, and then just add it as you're making more. And then make sure you add them and, eat them right away. Or you can reserve the liquids and make an enchilada sauce. So, I'm gonna do it as close as I can that Mom did it. So what I did was I boiled this big batch of the pork. And what you want to do is you want to figure out 2 to 3 ounces of meat per tamale when you're getting it. And plus you want to add the edible, and make sure you have the edible and you have the non-edible portion of the meat when you're buying it, because it depends on what you get. Now, if you're getting a lean meat, which doesn't have the bones and the meats in it, the fats in it, you can you can use all edible portion. But if you want to use some of the beautiful fats, which I have taken out from the meat, and this is going to be called suit. And this is the fat that is skimmed. This beautiful fat is skimmed from when you cook it in a big pot, and you reserve the broth from the pork, and then you basically are you're skimming it after it's cooled down, and you're skimming all the fat off of it. So, like I said, I have, and you want to add, and then you want to use it for the masa. Yeah, because, I mean, what is tamales without, pork tamales without the fat? And there's another tip I want to give you with, when you're cooking in large pots, and this is a little safety tip, be careful when you pick up the pot. Once it kind of cools down, you know, of course you have to ice it in a professional kitchen. And I never ice it because I make tamales when it's really cold. I can just open it, let the cold air come in from like 39 degrees outdoors, and just put the pot right there and it cools down. And then constantly stir it. But when you're picking up a pot, make sure you keep it close to you as possible, okay? Because this is going to support, you're going to support your back instead of hurt your back, okay? And I have a tendency to do this, and it's not good. But that's in a professional kitchen, and or you can have someone help you, which is even better. So you could use smaller containers when you're cooking. Now, I do have already prepped lard that I found, and there's one particular lard that I like using that my mom has used, and you can tell that it's not processed so much. It's close to the fat that I skimmed off the top. See, it's almost the same color. If you get into those bright white lards, I would steer away from them. This is a lard that my mom has used. So when you're looking for your lard, make sure you find a lard that's like has this beautiful color and that's been in business for many, many years. You want to get a reputable type of lard. Okay. So I have let me see, I want to make sure, so I have it melting, I have it turned off, because what I'm going to do is after I take all the fat from this, this meat, the pork, I'm going to go ahead and put that in there. You just kind of shred it. This pork is, you know, it's already cooled down. And what kind of pork? I would say, well, this is a pork shoulder. I like the pork shoulder because there's a lot more meat in the pork shoulder. So, get that going. So I'm going to, and then I always put a little bit of broth in it. I always put, actually I put extra broth in the pork broth in the tamales so that, you know, they can so I can have that extra liquid in there just in case I gotta hurry up and make some more. And you can always put it in the freezer, whatever's left. And this has a lot of fat. Like my grandmother, she would love all the fat in this. And she would just like, oh. My grandmother used to say, estos tamales van a salir tan sabrosos because of the fat in there. And so the more fat, the secret to a good tamale is the more fat, the better it is. So these are your traditional pork tamales. And a lot of times people love the pork tamales more than anything else. So this makes beautiful gifts. So in that fat in there, it's not gonna, Of course, if you're on a special diet, then I would do the lean pork Okay, so now I can put this aside. So I would do a lean pork, and I would do a nice lean pork. So, okay. A lean pork, and then add your oils that you're used to. Oil could be the coconut oil, or it can be the Expeller Express canola oil, and then, but it's going to give it a whole different flavor. But for me, I think, oh, you could use butter. That's not getting away from fat, but for me, a lot of like Julia Childs used to say, lard is misunderstood, and certain fats are easily digestible, and in moderation. That's what my father used to say. But if you're on a really, really strict diet, like I have a friend who he's elderly and he has high blood pressure, I would use a chicken. I would give him only chicken, and I would try to get as lean as possible. And then I would do flavorings, like flavor up the masa by using canola, if you're going to use those types of oils, I would flavor it up with the three main ingredients, which are, as I'm about to tell you, which are the granulated garlic, granulated onion, or powder, either one, pepper, and comino. Those are my three main seasonings that I put in with my meats. And then I use a base flavoring. And I try to stay away from all the chemicals, like this one right here. I'm going to read it real quick. It has, it doesn't have that many. The less, the better. This one has a chicken meat with natural juices, salt, organic cane solids, maltodextrin, and yeast extract, chicken fat flavoring, potato flour, and turmeric. So I like that. It's a little bit more pricier, but to me, it's healthier. Now, and then you have to read the sodium. This has less than the regular. This has 500 milligrams, and you can find organic flavorings, but this has 500 milligrams, and which is 21% of the intake. So when you're making these tamales I might go ahead and do a video clip to do some special made tamales, and I would put some of these flavorings into the masa to make them more flavory, and in that way it doesn't take away from what the fat can do to the masa. Sorry. Oh, you can use the dried peppers, and you can put them on the comal. You can heat them up, put them on the comal, and then you can make them into a mole. You put them in a little bit of water, and then you just go ahead and put them in the blender, and then you can make a mole and add it to your meat. Yeah, those are really, really good. So what I want to do right now for time purpose, for